Whether you're joining a Product Marketing Alliance event for the first time, or if you're a seasoned regular, welcome to the second edition of the Customer Marketing Summit. Before we dive into the day's content, we just want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, partners, speakers, and you, our lovely audience. From wherever you are watching in the world, we're sure you'll enjoy the sessions from our incredible lineup. With expert presentations, specialist talks, and deep dive panel sessions on the agenda, you are in for a real treat today. To get the most out of these sessions, please ensure you are sharing your feedback and asking all your questions in the comments section, and our speakers will be answering them throughout the day. After the event, a great place to continue the conversation is in the customer marketing channel in the PMA Slack community. If you aren't already a member, hop on over and come and join the discussion. And if that's still not enough, then why not become a PMA Pro member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, and our entire library of videos and slide decks from all our events. So with all that to come, let's dive right into the next session.
So hi everyone, thanks for joining us at the Customer Marketing Summit. Today, the four of us are going to be discussing how to build a successful ambassador program of customer evangelists and setting up customer advisory boards, case studies, a whole lot of great things. And we've got a great lineup of people with us. So I'm actually going to let everyone introduce themselves. I see just Bridget first. So Bridget, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, my name is Bridget Heaton. I'm based in New York City. I've spent the last 2.5 years working at a company called Calibra, where I've built the foundations of customer marketing, as well as their community of data citizens. Prior to that, I worked at a company called Schoology, which has since, I think, been acquired by PowerSchool. I also built the advocacy programs and community there, full of teachers and school administrators. And way back, I used to work in international education and help to administer programs for the Department of State. So I have a long history of working in programs, building programs, and helping to develop advocates. It's nice to meet you all.
Fantastic. Carrie.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here. My name is Carrie Timms, and I am the Director of Global Customer Marketing in EMEA at Facebook. So my team are responsible for end-to-end business marketing across the EMEA region, and that encompasses everything from advocacy programs to training, to good old-fashioned advertising, the whole spectrum, which is orientated towards our large, small and medium businesses in EMEA. I'm talking to you today from a place called Southend-on-Sea. It's just outside London, about an hour outside London, by the seaside. That's where I live, and that's where I've been for the past 18 months. So it's great to be here. As I say, prior to my current role at Facebook, I've got a long history of working at a bunch of CPGs. So I was at Unilever, I've been at Nestle, always been a CPG person up until now, and always involved in various aspects of marketing. And it's great to meet you all.
Fantastic. Glad to have you here. And Anita, please tell us about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Anita. I lead product and customer marketing at Throughput. Our AI-powered supply chain software helps companies to run their supply chain sustainability on autopilot by leveraging existing data. I'm based in Mannheim in Germany. Prior to my current role, I've worked in product and customer marketing programs at companies like Dell EMC, Linux, and Signavio. I'm very excited for an all-woman customer panel discussion today and really look forward to an exciting discussion.
Fantastic, and I'll just introduce myself before we take it away. My name is Emma. I'm currently the Director of Product Marketing at Velocity, early stage startup where we basically empower developers to streamline, accelerate their product delivery by building and the full autonomy to spin up fully isolated production-like environments. Basically in the same way that someone can create a Git branch. So I'm very focused in the developer marketing world, and I have been for the past 3+ years prior into B2B, always trying to connect with our customers as much as possible, whether it's through advisory boards, promoting them to speak at different events, and really working with them to kind of help grow the way that we create our own products as well. So I'm very happy to be joining everyone here as well as we discuss all the different things that you guys have been achieving at your amazing companies. And I love that we have a variety of people from around the world and various stages of companies with a lot of experience, which I think is really amazing to have from different types of personas that I'm sure we're all approaching as well when it comes to customer marketing. So I guess I'd love to just sort of ask as a more high level question, how do brands, can you develop genuine and valuable customer evangelists? How do you find them in the first places? What would define a good advocate for you? And how have you started a sort of program in the first place, or the initial outreach to a customer to see if they're even willing to?
I'd love to share an example from Facebook, and I can't claim the credit for it. It's entirely my team. I've only been at Facebook actually for 7 months, so this is testament to my wonderful team. But by way of context, at Facebook, we're very lucky to have almost 10 million advertisers on our platform. And of that, the large majority are small and medium businesses. So a couple of years ago, we recognized that there was an opportunity to really share these really powerful stories that we were hearing from these SMBs that we were meeting at events or meeting through our activations. And we saw that there was an opportunity to really set that relationship on more of a formal footing, and also to scale and amplify the fantastic stories that we were hearing. So we set up something called the Boost with Facebook Leaders Network. And this is a really thriving community that we have 12,000 members globally. In EMEA, we have 2,000 members across 9 countries. And so some of the things that we've learned along the way, and I'll try and keep it simple and short, are basically boiled down to 2 things. I don't think you can have a successful and a thriving customer advocacy program unless you have a happy customer, right? So I think the first focus is always on making sure that the experience that the customer has, whether it's brand or whether it's product, is super positive. Because I think if you have a happy customer, then you've got you're 80% of the way there in terms of potentially having an evangelist. We also approached the Boost with Facebook Leaders program in a very with a very kind of servant mindset. So our idea is that really the advocate should get more out of the program than we are, and that's kind of always our goal. It should be very much they coming out of the experience feeling valued and feeling appreciated. And so for me, that fundamental is there really of making sure you have a happy customer, making sure they believe that they're getting that value and appreciation out of the program. The other piece I would say as well that we've learned along the way is that it's really about relationships. So we don't view this network in a transactional way, right? It's not kind of ad hoc. We don't just parachute in as and when. We deeply invest in the program, and we spend time with our advocates. So whether that is one-to-one or masterclasses or training, we really try and have these surprise and delight moments, so that actually there's consistency and there's commitment over time, and there's that relationship. And I think that's quite crucial to setting up a program.
I love that. Bridget, Anita, anyone wants to jump in?
I'm happy to jump in. It's funny, I'm enjoying this already because I feel like we all come from such different experiences. So most of my experience in customer marketing has been building something from nothing. So at companies where there's nothing happening, so how do you spin something up from zero and scale it ultimately to thousands? And so I've always found, or at least I have the philosophy that there's always a story to tell or something to share at any point in the customer life cycle. So my approach has always been, if I can get into a company and I can figure out what is that journey that the customer is supposed to be taking to be successful, and then how can you map moments of advocacy across that journey and sort of have like a hybrid community advocacy map of different menu of opportunities. If you're starting from zero, at least you have something to sort of refer to. And then you sort of are opportunistic, it's Schoology. It was an amazing experience because I was able to see exactly who was the most active on social media or who was blogging without us asking them to be blogging. And those were the people, I think there were 19 people that I reached out to help really partner to build the advocacy programs. And I invested in those 19 people over 5 years at that company and was able to sort of build this sort of advocate journey with them. And really, if I knew I was continuing to engage those folks, then I could kind of cyclically engage somebody who is net new and offers similar experiences, but always having to continue to engage those really, early adopters. At Calibra is a little bit different, where truly it was opportunistic, and it was, who can the customer success folks bring to me and who can I map along this journey? And it sometimes was people who just signed up as a customer, but maybe they had a little bit of like the gift of the gab, or like you knew that they really had that kind of quality that you were looking for in an advocate. Investing in those relationships and sort of bootstrapping along the way helped to build that flywheel of advocacy while we planned long term and built a community that was based in advocacy that could scale that from like 20 to 30 people to we're now at 5,000. So it's really been sort of
That's impressive
effort. Yeah, but it's taking those early adopters and nurturing those relationships over time.
No, I really connect with that a lot. Of also from scaling up, and I was privy to a lot at my previous company, which was a much more corporate company in the past, where you have whether it's longer life cycles or you're working with hundreds of customers, and you might have the issue of legal might not be able, their legal side not be able to kind of have a advocacy, but there's other interesting ways, which we'll get to, I'm sure, of other ways that we can kind of get testimonials as well. But what I love now, what we're doing is really starting from scratch, and we're still in beta mode, but we have just secured 3 testimonials as well, 2 in video and 1 not. So it's actually really exciting that when we're launching soon with our non-beta product, then we're going to be having that as well. And that came from purely that relationship building that you both mentioned as well, of constant on the way. And obviously, where I'm at a place with a much smaller team, there's 12 of us. The majority of them are engineers, but sitting on calls or using Gong and listening to every one of the messages and following up with customers, and realizing that, yeah, even in the POC beta mode, you can kind of get out there and really scale up. So I really like that. Cool. Anita, I'd love to hear a little bit from you, and then sorry, Bridget.
I was going to say, just to comment on what you said, it's amazing that people, and often customer success or whomever is sort of the account owners, they just don't ask. And so sometimes just the act of asking is mind blowing, because they'll say yes, and then it's everyone shocked by that. So always try to ask. So yeah.
I love it. I guess, Anita, do you have anything to share on this as well? Or even to add to that, sort of how have you kind of gone in and started asking out, kind of following up on Bridget's question of every one of us probably works with different teams, and sometimes we're not the ones that are as marketers, always the first customer facing side. How have you all kind of approached that aspect of getting customers in the first place? Anita, do you want to start?
Yep, sure. I think I would just like to continue over what Bridget said in terms of especially programs where you start from scratch. I think a lot is really about figuring out what your core objectives are of building a customer advisory board. And typically when you're starting in the process, I think you have certain ideas in mind, but as you kind of really formalize it, you try to understand that it's very significant to find out what types of customers fit into what kind of objectives. So building those segments and kind of really mapping it to the objectives that we want, and what kind of customers can basically even commit to the amount of engagement and commitment that's required to drive a successful CAB, which requires more about participation from a customer's point of view, because it's not where we want to go and kind of educate people about what we do, but we really want to understand more about how their experience has been, so that we can kind of really scale that and amplify that and kind of use that as a framework that helps other customers relate to their peers, right? So I think also it depends on some of the industry verticals in general, I would say. So certain segments, when it comes to e-commerce or B2C in general, I think customer marketing programs kind of are extremely important, and the way in which you kind of structure them is kind of dramatically different because it's a lot more receptive in general. But currently in my role, I'm part of the industrial marketing in the supply chain side, where I think while the supply chain as a concept has kind of really picked up massive momentum post the pandemic, everyone's talking about all the bottlenecks that all of us are experiencing. But I think in terms of understanding how do I reach out to my target customers in general to understand, can I basically maybe to some extent optimize what I have learned over the years with slightly different industry verticals versus trying to figure out maybe for the target audience that I'm trying to deal with, what are the best effective channels that we should structure it around. So I think those are some of the important ways of identifying how do you find the right advocate, and also kind of build something that advocates also kind of associate and relate to, more importantly, I would say.
Yeah. If I can build on that, I think it's some great points you make there, Anita. I think in the experience we had with our advocacy program with the SMBs in EMEA, I think the key for us was really understanding also the expectations of the customer. I think we were starting almost with an idea and a blank sheet of paper. So it was really critical for us to understand what the customer and the advocates expectations were, and then crucially make sure that we were also meeting that expectation with the resources, with the time, with the relationship of building that I mentioned. So I think, for us, it was a simple act of a survey, sending a survey to these individuals and hearing their stories, and then mapping that back to the launch of the network. And really happy to say that I think 2 years in, we have something like a net promoter score of 7.4. Always work to be done, but we're just, again, that kind of listening mindset and that servant mindset I described earlier has been really, really key.
Yeah, I really love that. And I'd be interested to hear from all of you, from setting up a advocacy program and the engagement with your customers. How hands-on have you all been? And how often do you think that we need to have customer advisory boards in the first place, or similar sort of community engagement? What's too much? What's too little? How have you kind of struck that good balance of giving back from that relationship building, and then allowing them obviously to be an evangelist for the company as well?
I can jump in on that one. I think there's multiple parts to sort of what you're saying there, but I'll just start. I've mostly been a team of one, or a team of like one or two, but I still always sort of owned those components of the program. So, if there's an advocacy program that we were running, I was the one that was responsible for the recruitment, the administration, the engagement, and the reporting, and everything in between. So to start, that is probably the expectation I would set, is that, especially in a lot of the companies that are, just evolving those roles, or it's like the first hire on the customer marketing side, there's so much, like the market is crazy right now for people in customer marketing because companies are really recognizing this need, but you're often going to be like one of three max on the team. So you sort of have to know that going in. Now, the second component to that is, how do you sort of, I've read the question sort of like, engagement, like how do you continue that participation over time? By proxy of the fact that, you're probably short-staffed in terms of doing it, you sort of, to me, it's always been about expectation setting and behavior building. So knowing, like, you want your advocates to know what to expect from participation in the program, and you want them to sort of sign up and sort of own what they're signing up for. Terms and conditions are really important, opt-ins, like understanding that if you're applying to this program, this is what it means to participate. From that, if you're saying that, you need to show up and you need to do the work. So, for example, with our ambassadors at Schoology, I would have a monthly video call where they would all talk to each other. And every month we showed up and did that. And I stayed late at work and I ran it. And I was responsible for getting like the speakers, like the featured speakers, and setting the agenda. But I also every Monday would post announcements or post, topics or in the group that we had. The same thing goes for our community of data citizens. It was much larger. So the idea was, let me every month I'm going to build this behavior of knowing that we're going to run this special program of resources and activities, even if it's as simple as the big thing for February we did this year was downloadable Valentines, and like something that they could engage with that was a little bit more large scale, but still value-based and something that they could get out of, but have a positive experience with the brand. But doing that on a monthly basis, they sort of know what they're going to get from you as a brand, but also you as that program administrator, and building that face-to-face relationship with them. They know it's going to be you that they can go to with any questions. I think that's probably how I would approach that ongoing engagement piece.
What about you, Emma? What do you think about this topic?
So I found that it's a very different right now. So I'm much more hands-on, and I'm on calls that are part, why is this feature not working? And it's, me sitting with the engineers, and then also kind of getting feedback, which can then bring into what we're eventually going to be promoting from a product marketing perspective. So it's a little bit different, whereas previously at the other company, which was at Blazemeter and Broadcom and some of the other smaller companies that I was at before, but much larger than an early stage startup, I noticed that we would have stuff on a much more regular basis, but in a different way. So it was much more streamlined. So we would have our similar, instead of being monthly, it was sometimes bi-monthly and sometimes quarterly. And then we would split it in the sense of we would have a quarterly product marketing and customer success call together that would kind of be part of this ambassador group of people, where we'd get feedback and have our quarterly roadmaps and get the sort of network session going on. And then our customer success team, which I would sometimes hop on here and there, would be on a more regular basis. Sometimes it would be weekly, bi-weekly. So there was a different element. Right now we're in a stage that we don't necessarily have a full-time customer success person. So we're all engaged in the activities of building that customer relationship. And as we're in this POC mode, I think that constant feedback and that engagement is both beneficial for both of us. And it's been amazing as well, because of that great feedback and me coming in and saying, well, actually, would you like to make a testimonial as well? And we'd love for you to share your experiences with others. And I know we are all coming from different types of industries as well, but with developers as well, as we're in a beta mode right now. Mm-hmm. So having advocates and evangelists for us is fantastic, because we don't have a try before you buy yet. Yeah. As we're still a young company, right. And that's a huge thing for developers. So being able to have their peers being able to share their experiences as well, and mm-hmm. having that relationship that we're showing that, okay, we've got the feedback from you, and we're gonna do these features that you want, yeah. And this is gonna influence our roadmap, and being able for them to then be the evangelist to their peers as well to get more customers. Yeah.
And I think you're right. There's something that we've learned along the way about this peer feedback as well. We're the same as you in many ways, although obviously coming at it from a corporation's perspective. But we certainly view feedback in this two-way street. So very much for us, obviously, it gives us the opportunity to get authentic, real-time, tangible feedback about our products and services. But from the side of the advocates and our customers, I think one of the most striking things they tell us is actually it's the opportunity to network with other like-minded businesses that they really, really value. And again, it's that opportunity as well. We do it in a bunch of different ways. Sometimes it's one-to-one, sometimes it's forums, sometimes even speaking to some of our senior leaders, but we give them that opportunity to tell us what's working, what's not working, where we can do better. They also give us a real temp check and a real finger on the pulse in terms of the reality, right? The reality for a small or medium business, especially now that we're in a pandemic. So again, we very much see this as a two-way, relationship where as much as we're getting something out of it, we want to make sure that our advocates are also getting real value. And sometimes, we've had them, have access to products in beta, or we've had them contribute to project roadmaps, which again is another example of a win-win.
I like that you noticed you mentioned the pandemic, which obviously we all are in, and we're all in our global places around the world. I'd love to hear from all of you, how have that shifted and changed because of customer advisory boards? We're used to going and meeting customers in person, flying around the world, and now Zoom and all of our wonderful events. So how have you found that? Has it impacted any of the relationships? Has it propelled it? Have you had more positive feedback? I'd love to kind of hear from all of you, your thoughts on that.
Sure, maybe I can start. I think I would definitely say that it's got many advantages and also some disadvantages in terms of the shifts that have happened. Some of the advantages in general post the pandemic has been the minimal amount of efforts that are required from a travel perspective, and the physical logistics part of it, right? That completely gets taken care of. So a lot more customers are now willing to kind of utilize that effort on their side to be able to kind of be more participative, I would say. The disadvantage probably sometimes is there definitely is a different camaraderie. When you're in person, you're trying to talk, chat, figure out, network, and talk to your peers. I think that element sometimes is a little bit missing. But having said that, I think a lot more people are now able to access a lot more of the cabs in general, which makes it really more valuable for us as customer marketers, because the wider the audience is going to engage, it's going to have a truly network effect in terms of how you can amplify the potential of what you offer as a solution. I think in general, it's been working quite well for us. I would say post the pandemic, we are seeing a lot more traction, a lot more adoption, a lot more interest in terms of being more participative, especially in the design programs that we try to orchestrate, I would say.
It's interesting because for us, we were actually always virtual. We always set up the Leaders Network in a virtual context pre the pandemic. So albeit that we've had many pivots we've had to make because of the pandemic, this actually hasn't been one of them. But what I think has been really interesting is, because obviously the focus of this advocacy program is small and medium businesses, I think again it's this point that in the context of the pandemic, which has been so challenging for a lot of our members, it's been an outlet and it's been a real forum for them to be able to, share stories, share strategies. And I think that's been that's deepened the interaction, that's deepened the relationship during the pandemic. But really, yes, for us, I think we've just tried to be that connector, be that connective tissue at a time when we know. I think we ran a survey during the first UK lockdown, and we found that 40% of the businesses that we surveyed were closed, obviously because of lockdowns. And so having this, like Anita's saying, having this forum where you could easily join and you have that virtual component, we found that we've had a much more deeper and richer engagement with our advocates.
And I totally echo what's being said. I think the pandemic has forced us all to be a lot more creative and agile in the work we're doing. I would say from like a program planning or event planning perspective, people have really had to step up their game and figure out different ways to engage their customers. But I also would agree that it's provided a lot more opportunity, as they've said, to engage, different people across your customer base in these product feedback moments or in these events or in these advocacy opportunities that you maybe wouldn't have reached before, or at least, you could broaden those efforts. I know at Calibra, so much of our marketing strategy was physical events, physical user groups. And then the pandemic hit, and it became an opportunity where we really needed to shift our approach and strategy. And that was a moment where I was able to shine and say that I can launch a digital platform and get it stood up pretty quickly. And so we stood up a digital community for our customers instead of, probably taking the approach that, small group and then scale out. Instead, I had to go really big and I had to just launch something. So we launched a digital community last June. I believe it was June 2020. Which it was grounded in advocacy. It's an advocate marketing platform. So the approach then became, all right, let's take this really wide group of people. I think we're at 5,000 registrants after a year, which is amazing. Obviously not all of them are like highly engaged and active, but that's a meaty number to play with. So what can we do within this platform to identify these advocates and these opportunities for product feedback. So we're kind of doing this parallel pathing of like high touch, high impact, relationship building, and then large scale, like high impact, like low touch. And then how can we, use those as opportunities to identify new people to get feedback from, and pass that into our product teams, build those customer councils from those, people who are raising their hands through the community now. So it's been an interesting experience over the last year, but it's forced us all to be more creative and opportunistic in terms of getting that feedback and really making a difference with it across the organization.
Yeah, I really love that. I also agree that it's amazing to be able to find people that you wouldn't necessarily think of, because often you get put in this thing, I'm going to choose my top 10 customers. They're the ones that are going to give the feedback. And in some ways, I mean, me putting on my product marketing hat, as opposed to just from the customer side that I also focus on, you understand that, well, the feedback that you want is also from people who are leaving, or people that are early adopter or just starting out, they've just signed up. So having that ability to widen, but also maintaining your small group of tight-knit sort of power users, I think is a really nice way. We obviously right now, where I am right now, it's a much smaller group of people, so a pool. But what I really enjoyed when we shifted as well from my previous company from in-person cab to virtual cab is that we did kind of widen it a bit. We still didn't want to open it to thousands of users, but what we did was we did 2 sort of days. One, which was like our top power users split by the specific product line and persona related use cases. And then we had an overview that we would bring together with the breakup groups. And then the second day was the sort of the more newer users and the feedback, but that are still, because we didn't have the capacity at the time to do a 5,000 person sort of advocacy type program. But what I loved about that was that we got a lot of amazing feedback that went back directly to our product teams that did have some influences, because we got, even though there was a lot of overlaps between our power users and the newer users, it was really great to kind of hear the things that influenced the roadmap from those new users as well. Amazing. So I know we kind of dealt about some cabs. I'd like to hear a little bit about, and we kind of spoke a bit about logistics as well. Let's talk about what would you say is like your top 5 tips for just getting the testimonials once you've had those customer advisory boards and those relationships. After we'll get a little bit talking about the cabs itself, but I'd love to kind of, we've talked about the things that we can approach to and give to the customers. I'd love to hear how you have gotten sort of, whether it's testimonials or other unique sort of interesting options that your customer evangelists have done for you, whether it's through these outreach advocacy programs or other types of ways as well.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've had like as I say, there's a really engaged community of these amazing stories to tell. And I think how we've always viewed it is going back to the point I said earlier about consistency and relationship building. So when it comes to securing and soliciting these testimonials, it's a case of not just dropping in an ad hoc way, as I was saying before, but because we have that relationship in place already, then you find that the advocates are likely more receptive to the ask. I mean, for us, it's again about making sure that, of course, the legal side is covered off, but making sure we've got all the necessary approvals. But also we try to make sure that the advocates really understand the benefit for them, right, in this testimonial, and given as a testimonial. And we find that actually by going down that route of making really clear what the benefit is for them in the end, rather than what it is for us, we're able to get those outcomes. So we find, for example, I can give you an example, like earlier this year, we had an event in Europe where we had about 500 small medium businesses and press attend this event where Sheryl Sandberg was in attendance, and one of our amazing founders from a South African company called Lucky Makoti, she was able to interview Sheryl, and through that she was able to obviously get exposure for her business and get the opportunity that perhaps she might not otherwise have had. And so that's an example of really just when we engage with our customers, just being really clear on kind of what the benefit is for them, why they would want to do it, either from a networking point of view or in terms of the opportunity or the exposure for their business. And that's how we tend to garner these kind of testimonials and inputs.
Yeah, I love that. I love that sort of leveraging the brand and the customers as well. We did that a lot at my previous company as well, and I really think that we promoted them to speak at various events, speaking directly to customers, not even mentioning us necessarily as a company, but just going out there, and they might be having one screenshot of showing the name of the company that we use. And that was gold for us as well. Exactly. So I really, it's
exactly that.
So I love that there's sort of like out of the box, different approaches that everyone thinks, okay, no, I have to go directly to them, get this written case study, and there's so many interesting ways to elicit those customers to talk about you.
I would agree with that. I was just going to say that, I think one of the powerful skills of a customer marketer is often to be sort of like that human Rolodex, if you will, of like, you really want to have a command of everybody in your community. And, you can obviously take notes and keep that, or maybe it's in your notes app, maybe there's a more formal CRM that you're using to make that happen. But when the time comes and your comms team's coming to you with this amazing, opportunity to be highlighted by Forbes or something like that, you want to know off the top of your head or in an easy to find system, who are the people in my community who, maybe it's the white whale customer, that you've been trying to capture, but that this is that real marquee opportunity. That's when you go for them. Or maybe it's somebody you've been working with since day one who's really earned their stripes over time, and it can be that person. So I think to echo what Carrie's saying, that relationship building, you can really be that oversight across all of the customer base to really designate like who are those people in the larger framework of opportunities who really are ready to participate at that level or take advantage of these logistical opportunities.
I love that point, Bridget. I think that's exactly how we play it as well. We tend to ahead of time have like a database and a bank of all these testimonies and case studies. Like literally you can just search into this database, and to your point, when the opportunity arises or when comms or sales or whoever, you have that at your fingertips. And I think, as you say, it's marrying the opportunity. And I mean, I can think of a great one recently that we did in Italy with a company called Serendipity Shop, and so they really focused on providing alternatives to single-use plastic. And so an opportunity came to connect them with Elle magazine in Italy, who were doing a sustainability feature. And exactly to your point, it's that kind of Rolodex of, oh, there's this company here, and and being able to create those moments and those connections, which is so valuable for all sides.
Absolutely. So it's not easy, and I think that to say that you could start at a job tomorrow and be able to do that, no, like that takes, you have to, I think that's probably a good precedent to set in this panel for anybody who's trying to get into this, that it takes time, and it takes networking internally too, to figure out who those right people are to build the Rolodex. Like, I would go to user groups, meet everybody, sit at the table at lunch, take notes, remember every conversation. Like, you have to do the work to be able to do what Carrie is saying effectively.
I'd love to kind of go on that point and see what have been the difficulties that you've all faced, whether it's scaling up from scratch or even in bigger companies through collaboration, working with different teams. What difficulties have you found, and kind of how you've overcome them to succeed with the programs that you have all been working with?
Yeah, maybe I can go with this. I think typically there are two very common challenges, irrespective of whether I'm beginning a program from scratch or whether it's a mature setup. I think managing expectations is number one. trying, end of the day, I mean, whatever type of a cab we build, customer is trying to use our products or platforms or solutions for a specific objective. And there could be times or scenarios when things don't go as planned. So how do you consistently manage expectations? That becomes extremely critical. A lot of the times, I think many customers basically participate in your CAP programs for being that leading edge participant in building the roadmap of the product, being an early adopter, or trying to experiment and understand how they could be more participative in the roadmap that you're building. So understanding how they could kind of really figure out when the roadmap is probably not aligned or is not launched based on the timelines and commitments what we promised. How do you again manage expectations and drive some transparent and consistent communication about what's coming up or what's getting delayed or what's probably not fixed, what's going to take slightly longer time based on different reasons that typically the engineering teams experience. So I think those two things are really critical. Of course, a lot comes with experience. When you try to understand what's the rhythm that works internally within your engineering teams and how the customer success team kind of communicates and how do you kind of seamlessly integrate all the different layers and then try to build the expectations management and then of course the communications program that you want to put together. I think those two are probably the most problematic areas that I usually encounter. Would love to hear from you, Emma. Like, what do you think are things on your side?
So I'll say collaboration, I think is very, very important with marketing in general. So I'm a product marketer. I'm not part of a customer marketing team. So, but I do a lot of I've managed, even in my previous companies, a lot of the case studies and working with, whether it was a solutions marketing team or customer success team. So I really think that relationships with those other teams are important. And similar to just from the product marketing role of being able to kind of be a sort of messenger in between. One of the problems that I think that we've faced in the past is that we don't want to use a customer too much. So I love that idea of having that database of being able to kind of see who's there, because you could even maybe write something like they just did something a week ago. So we don't want to reach out to them too much because I'm sure they're getting engaged with so many conversations, whether it's feedback sessions from product team or the customer success team has calls with them. And they have a lot of other stakeholders that are in that relationship. Sales team are trying to come in and upsell them at the same time. So we have lots of kind of clashing components that it's very important to work together, that we're not bothering the customer too much, because that at the end of the day is that relationship that we want to savor. So I think that finding that balance and having either in a way per customer, per account, having that connection that's worked really well, working with either the account manager in the past and the relevant customer success engineers and sales teams that were associated, that creating kind of these little pods in a way really kind of helped make sure that we didn't overwhelm those customers too much. Yeah, any other
I would
insights
on that, because that is exactly what mine is. That would be exactly my response. It's a mixture between Anita and yours, Emma. Expectation setting. I mean, every how many times has anybody heard like we need to do like 50 customer case studies in the next like 3 months? Like, no, no, that's very difficult to do. And it's, especially if you're just getting started, like you could be 3 years in and that's hard to do. So that's one. I think Rome isn't built in a day, you know, it takes time. But also, if you were to do 50 customer case studies at a time, you're doing a disservice to the customers who are participating in those case studies, because they all need to have their requisite time to shine in that promotional cycle. So what are they getting out of it if it's just going to be, you know, something that goes on the website? So like, you know, so to kind of say what you're saying, Emma, I've always felt like a customer marketer works with advocates, but they are the advocate's advocate in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so important that you know, inevitably, if you have a star advocate and you've used them 5 times, your CMO is going to come to you and say, let's use Bob again. You can't use Bob again. You have to protect those advocates on behalf of the overall organization.
Yeah, and to your point, Bridget, I think it's that kind of quality over quantity message, plus one to exactly what you're saying. We find that it's exactly that. We want to go deep with the stories that we're telling and the engagements that we're having, and so therefore that means you can't have that volume. I mean, we recently did a campaign in the UK and Germany with a bunch of our advocates, where we were basically it was called the Windows campaign, and we were basically like dressing up a couple of like small businesses on the high street, which, as we all know, has been super ravaged by the pandemic. And that kind of effort, exactly to your point, Bridget, it takes time, it takes alignment, it takes collaboration. As you were saying, Emma, it's not the kind of thing you could roll out of at volume. You know, you're trying to go much deeper than just something you place on the website. I mean, what we're trying to do is really integrate the stories that we're hearing and the relationships, again, that word again, trying to integrate that into the fabric of what we're marketing or in terms of how we're going about our comms. And so that takes time. That isn't something that you kind of just churn out. You really have to, exactly as you say, invest in it, and also make sure that your internal stakeholders also recognize that as well.
I really love that. So I know we're coming up to time, so I'd love to just do a quick round and hear your top 3 tips or takeaways that you would say for anyone who's going to start a customer advocacy program and start reaching out.
Before, so
I'm happy to go. I'm happy to go first if you want.
You go.
Yeah. So I'll say that, I mean, it came up a lot in the session as well, that the relationship building and the collaboration, both internally and externally, I think is key. I also think that, you know, empowering them, our customers, as well as, you know, being able to get feedback, being a two-way street, beyond just the initial, we like you, you like us, really seeing what's make it worth for everyone. And being able to be fluid in this idea of, you know, the quality versus the quantity, I think is fantastic. And
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you said it, Emma, and I'm not gonna repeat because you said it so beautifully. I think one thing I would add is I think also making sure that alignment with business priorities. We find that obviously this work that we're doing with small and medium businesses really docks into our mission and our view about the role Facebook plays in empowering entrepreneurs and the role it plays in driving the economy. And so therefore that alignment is really critical in identifying who those customers are and how they ladder back up to your priorities. And as they shift, so for example, sustainability is something that's really top of mind for us. It's about then shifting the makeup and the profile of those advocates to line up with that. So for example, we started working a lot more with small and medium businesses who are either working in the sustainability space. Is a great example of a company from Denmark who are really all about kind of equitable and ethical supply chains. So we're working with them now, and that ladders up to the agenda and the passion that we have for driving sustainability. So I would say making sure as well that your strategy for engagement and strategy for selection lines up with business priorities as well.
I totally echo what Carrie's saying, and Emma, that was a great synopsis. I totally agree with you as well. Just to echo the business objective comment that Carrie is making, I think because, you know, my experience is a lot of organizations where these programs are and these departments are even like non-existent yet. Sometimes the companies really don't even know what they're looking for in terms of like a measurement framework. So my advice is to just measure anything and everything from the start, even if it's vanity metrics. How many people are in the program? How engaged are they? What's the demographics of the program? To like, what are you getting out of the programs that you're running? That alone can help you paint a picture of success that in time, and it's not something you can find out, like sometimes it can take a year to figure out really impactful, like tell a really impactful story from that measurement. That's what you need in order to scale and get more buy-in to grow your program. So even if you feel like you're measuring for measuring's sake, do it. And then the second part I would say to that I would add on is my big tip forever and always is to just lead with authenticity, because you might come into a company and not be an expert in that particular industry, but you're, you know, meant to work with people who are the experts. So, you know, coming in and being yourself, not, you know, pretending you're some sort of expert in that field, that, you know, you're an expert in your field and you're helping them to shine and tell their stories and build opportunities for them, but also internally, like if you tell your advocates no, they need to understand that, you're obviously doing this on behalf of your business as well. So there's a give and a get, there's a motivation to everything. But as long as you're transparent about that and you're genuine about it, you're going to be more successful in the long run. It's not transactional. That's what builds those really strong relationships. So that would be my big tip.
I think continuing on what Bridget said, I think it's very critical that you have some objectives for why you want to build up your CAB. And oftentimes, a lot of customer marketers actually come up with some great objectives. But when you start running the program, the reality hits. And you find that what you're actually experiencing in reality is very different from what you set out for. So I think agility is being very, very important in terms of what you set out for versus what you discover and how you can optimize it continuously to reach the milestones that you want becomes extremely important. I also really like what Carrie and Emma said in terms of how this needs to be extremely human and less of transaction driven. So as much as we all love agendas and action-oriented CAB, end of the day, it's really about understanding that it should be about customer and it has to be about being customer driven first. That in the process will help you to be more successful in the long run for sure.
Fantastic. So Anita, Bridget, Carrie, thank you so much. I loved having this conversation with you all. It was fantastic.
That was amazing.
I could continue it for long, but there's only so much that we could say. But I really appreciate all of your time, and it was fantastic. I loved hearing, learning, sharing with you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much.
Thank
you
you
all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Eva.